Now, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. All right, we're going to pick up really where we left off last week. And as I was preparing this week for this day, and I'm looking at the information, and I'm thinking to myself, uh, it's going to be tedious, giving you a lot of information really in a short amount of time, and sometimes it's tedious to listen to, sometimes it's tedious to read through. But you must understand what we're up against. Uh, it's a new religion, and you have to understand what's behind this religion. Now, there are those that are simply just lying, propaganda, so on, distorting the science, all those kind of things. But there is a much darker side to it, to this environmental movement. And we're going to get into some of that today. And you'll see that in a term, climate change, as the environmental movement is putting it out there, is not glorifying to God whatsoever. In a term, and you'll see this not only in this lesson, but certainly as you start to put these lessons together as we keep going on, it is a spirit of Antichrist. We're going to start off, like I said last week, we would start to look at vegetarianism and veganism. Now, vegetarianism, veganism, and either one of them, the Bible does not particularly promote either avenue or chastise either avenue. 1 Corinthians 8, 8 and 9, but God will not commend us, but food will not commend us to God. We are neither the worse if we do not eat, nor the better if we do eat. But take care that this liberty of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. Daniel, when you look at Daniel, when he was in Babylon, he ate only vegetables. John the Baptist, locust, wild honey, who knows what else. Yeshua, if he took part in the Passover, and we know he did, he would have eaten the Pesach, the lamb. We know for certain that he ate broiled fish. He partook in that in his resurrected body. So again, vegetarianism, veganism, whatever avenue you choose, whatever diet that you choose, it's between you, the Lord, and your doctor, if you want to go that far. Titus 3:9, and we have to remember this, but avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and strife and disputes about the Torah, for they are unprofitable and worthless. When it comes to a person's diet, it's in the why. If you're going down a vegetarian path or a vegan path and you say, listen, this is what I'm doing for my health, or hey, I'm not very comfortable with what they're doing with animals out there and the things that they're putting in the animals and all, I'm with you. I totally, completely understand that. I respect that. That's not what we're dealing with in this lesson. We're dealing with vegetarianism, veganism, in cooperation with the environmental movement. And you're going to see that's a big problem. Michael Schellenberger has really been out front on this thing. He writes, he says, according to a group of climate change Italian psychologists, he said this, they view eating meat as the contamination of their bodily purity with the essence of death. For many, it is a revivification that if we all die, we will all die. So when you kill an animal, there is an ancient sacrifice which you offer to the gods. In response to the opinion that Europeans are the contaminators, Dr. Jordan Peterson opines, quote, what steps are being taken by hypothetically well-meaning ignorant Westerners who think in the low-resolution manner and whose thoughts are contaminated by unaddressed ethical concerns, asking poor people in developing countries to sacrifice their lives often to protect animals. Well, first of all, that's not going to work in the long run. They're just going to kill the animals, and that's exactly what you would do if you were there as well. Even Peterson understands what's happening. But let's get back to the scriptures. That's the focus, that's the basis of our argument. Genesis 9, verses 1 through 3. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the sky, with everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are given. Every moving thing, remes is the Hebrew word. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you, as I gave the green plant. Obviously, Scripture can't contradict itself. So the every moving thing has to be in accordance with Leviticus chapter 11. He didn't give us every green plant to eat. There are a lot of green plants that are out there that will make you incredibly sick. So you just can't eat anything that's out there. Likewise with live animals. So the moving thing, remes. Certainly God's not going to tell Noah, hey, partake in as much iguana as you want. No, that's not the case. But we're talking about a war on eating meat, which God said you can eat. Breitbart News. 2 Oregon State University professors have doubled down in declaring a worldwide climate emergency and warning of untold suffering. Curiously, as the first piece of evidence of impending climate disaster, the authors cite growing world ruminant livestock numbers, which have soared past 4 billion. We got too much cattle. Man, we got to come up with a way. Wonder how we can get rid of cattle. Maybe an explosion of some kind, perhaps. Knock out, I don't know, 18,000 or so. Not that that could ever happen. Future declines in meat consumption and production will probably not happen until there is a general shift to plant-based diets or increases in the use of meat analogs. A food website named Epicurious will cancel beef recipes to reduce global emissions, but will keep past beef recipes in the archive, the publication wrote. The publication claims that, quote, almost 15% of greenhouse gas emissions globally come from livestock and everything involved in raising it. 61% of those emissions can be traced back to beef, according to Michigan University's study from the Center for Sustainable Systems. The agenda could mean cutting diet-linked greenhouse gas emissions, reducing red meat consumption by 90%, and animal products by 50%. So the days of, if you want a hamburger, or beef stew, or maybe, you know what, you just want to sit down with a pot roast, no. Of course, now, the elites will have all of that made available for them, of course. You, on the other hand, no. We've got something much better for you. All right, you'll see that in a few moments. But if you notice, they also said animal products by 50%. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Animal products, I'm thinking milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, eggs, all animal products. Mark Morano, he wrote a book a number of years ago called Green Fraud. Now, what I'm going to give you is a couple years old, so he's using the term Green New Deal. You've probably heard of it. The Green New Deal couldn't make its way through Congress, even though they tried. And then our president came in and they rebranded it. And they took the Green New Deal and then they made it Build Back Better. Okay, and that didn't make it through. Well, at first you don't succeed. Try, and try again. And so this time they kind of streamlined it and they embedded it in another bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, because we got to reduce inflation. And so they put the Green New Deal inside of that. That made its way through Congress and now it's signed. So I wonder what it means. He writes, the Green New Deal and the entire climate agenda is not about the climate. It has very little to do with the climate, the environment, the health of the planet. It has everything to do with a progressive ideology using the climate scare to impose their solutions, which is essentially authoritarian government regulations on every aspect of our lives in the name of the climate scare. And because bovine flatulence is believed to be a major cause of climate change, you'll be eating fewer burgers and more insects. A video by Vanity Fair of actress Nicole Kidman eating bugs is part of a new push to get Americans used to the idea. The Green New Deal would also dictate what kind of house you could live in, and if you can drive a car. So the government will determine if you can drive your car. What kind of car? How far do you want to go? Because we're trying to save a planet here. At the core of this is what's called the degrowth movement. Fewer possessions, less income, less working hours. Less working hours somewhere in Hades. Karl Marx is smiling because that's what he wanted. Less working hours, more time to go fishing and hunting, reading, and philosophy. So the degrowth movement, as Morano said, and I mentioned it at the end of last week's lesson, doesn't have anything to do with slowing economic growth. It has to do with eliminating it. Okay? It's not about having your car slowing down to a stop. It's about slamming on the brakes and throwing in reverse. But that's not all. It's also about having fewer human beings on planet Earth. And this is where things get much darker, much more evil. Dr. Paul Ehrlich, he wrote a book in 1968 called The Population Bomb. 1968, that's the key. On the cover, it says this: while you are reading these words, 5 people, mostly children, have died of starvation, and 40 more babies have been born. The premise is, as long as we have economic growth, free market system, it's bad for the planet. But wait. Now, he wrote it in 1968. You would think, who would give this guy any kind of credibility whatsoever? Johnny Carson. In January of 1980, put him on The Tonight Show. So he gave him credibility. I wonder what he wrote about. Well, in the book, he talks about a total reordering of society. Fewer births. Gotta find a way. You can have as much sex as you want. You can have sex with anyone you want, anything you want. Fewer babies. Quote, the battle to feed all of humanity is over. The opening line reads, listen, in the 1970s, he wrote it in 68. In the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. It was likely, he went on, that the oceans would be without life by 1979. No more fish. 1979. And the United States would see its population plummet to just 23 million by 1999 due to pesticides. It's right around 350 million now, but we got so many illegals, we have no idea what our population is. Listen, the death rate will increase until at least 100 to 200 million people per year will be starving to death during the next 10 years, he told Mademoiselle magazine in 1970. Now you may think, what a nut. I mean, Carson was foolish enough to put him on The Tonight Show back in 1980. It's not like anybody's giving him a microphone now, right? He was on 60 Minutes 3 months ago. A fool. Which just goes to show you how they have declined in their journalistic integrity. Much like today's environmentalists, Ehrlich offered a slew of authoritarian economic prescriptions to salvage the earth. In 1977's Ecoscience, a book he co-authored with Barack Obama's future science czar, John Holdren, Ehrlich toyed with the idea of adding sterilant to drinking water or staple foods and compelling abortions to save the world from human beings. So you must get an abortion. Okay? Things are going to get darker. In an article entitled Reduce Population to Save the Planet, former UK finance chief stated, Britain and other Western nations should welcome declining populations and aging demographics as it will help them meet climate change goals. The former chairman of the Financial Services Authority has argued in a report from Population Matters entitled Smaller Families and Aging Populations, Lord Adair Turner, chairman of the UK Energy Transitions Commission and former head of the SAA, argued that declining native populations will enhance prosperity. So if you recall, that's what Janet Yeltsin said, I think, the Secretary of the Treasury, just a few months ago. We need more abortions to help the economy. Quote, the biggest reason to welcome this demographic shift is that it results from the free choice of empowered people, and in particular women. So he knows what a woman is. Lord Adair wrote, but ceasing endless population growth would also reduce humanity's future press on the natural environment, ease the challenge of adequate housing provision, and make it easier to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions while supporting prosperity growth in developing countries. The report said that Britain could cut carbon emissions by approximately 38 million tons by 2035 if it experiences a similar decline in population to Japan, which is expected to see a drop of 9.6% in population from 125 million to 113 million people by 2035. In contrast, the United Kingdom is expected to see an increase in the population of 5.2% over the same time period to 71 million people. Wait a minute, more people are in the UK. What? Driven in large part by mass migration. That's it. That's what's happening here in the United States. So you see, you can have sex as much as you want. Yes, go out and have as much sex. Just don't have any babies. Kill them. Abort them. Abortion pills, abortion clinics, right? Put condoms in the high schools, birth control pills, promote homosexuality, because you can bet your bottom dollar nobody's getting born out of that one. See, you can have as much sex as you want. Just don't have any children. So that's what's happening in the United States. And even those who are married are holding off on having a family, holding off on having a family, holding off. Yet the population of the United States is growing. Why? Open borders. So for every child we kill, we allow 3 to 4 illegals into the country. Fewer births, population growth. Same thing is happening in the United Kingdom. Listen, the Green Movement has long hailed population control as a means of saving the world from the so-called climate crisis. In a notable example, the founder of CNN, Ted Turner, called for a Chinese-style one-child policy in order to save the planet from climate change, 2010. So we need to do what the communist Chinese are doing. You're only allowed one child. And in China, if a woman got pregnant after the first child, you were forced to have an abortion. So Ted Turner said, that's a good thing. We need to do that here. Turner, himself a father of 5, oh, so you can only have one. He can have as many as he wants. Wait for it. Also suggested that quote unquote fertility rights could be sold in order to incentivize poor people not to have children by profiting from the sale of their child credit to wealthier people. So you're only allowed one, but because you're poor, the government will pay you to not have the child, and the child credit, you get paid, but the wealthier people can have as many as they want. You know who else said that? Margaret Sanger, 100 years ago, who started up Planned Parenthood. Quote, more children from the fit, less from the unfit. Her words. And what did she do? She started up Planned Parenthood. And where did she place the clinics, the abortion clinics? In the black neighborhoods. Other prominent leftist figures in the West, including New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, have all suggested that they may have fewer children than they would have otherwise if not for climate change. You see how dark this is? Now, God's opinion, Proverbs 17, verse 6, grandchildren are the crown of old men, and the glory of sons is their fathers. Isaiah 54, verse 13, all your children will be taught of the Lord, and the well-being of your children will be great. So we have this big gulf between this movement and what my Bible says. Oh, Nell Frizzell of Vogue magazine wrote that having children was environmental vandalism. Quote, before I got pregnant, I worried feverishly about the strain on the Earth's resources that another Western child would add, the food he ate, the nappies he wore, the electricity he would use. So giving birth on planet Earth will actually bring harm to planet Earth. What are we worshiping? Are we worshiping God? Or are we worshiping Mother Earth? She continues, for the scientifically engaged person, so none of you up there, the scientifically engaged person, there are few questions more troubling when looking at the current climate emergency than that of having a baby. Whether your body throbs to reproduce, you passively believe that it is in the cards for you one day, or you actively seek to remain child-free, the declining health of the planet cannot help but factor in your thinking. Deuteronomy 5, verse 29, oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me, and keep all my commandments always, that it may be well with them and with their children forever. Jeremiah 1, verse 5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. What are we teaching our children? That God cares about them, and He has formed them in the womb of their mother. And He has a future for them, and a plan, and a purpose for their life. And He wants that little one to grow up and accept Him, and accept His salvation, and worship Him, and serve Him, and rejoice in Him, and spend eternity with Him. That's what God wants from our children. What are we teaching our children? The very fact that you're breathing is bringing harm to the planet. It's a demonic cult. It's a cult. Specter of communism, the specter, the spirit of Antichrist. Michael Crichton, the author of Jurassic Park, once said, environmentalism is one of the most powerful religions in the Western world today. He said it possesses the typical characteristics of a religion. Quote, there's an initial Eden, a paradise, a state of grace and unity with nature. There's a fall from grace into a state of pollution as a result of eating from the tree of knowledge. And as a result of our actions, there is a judgment day coming for us all. We are all energy sinners, doomed to die, unless we seek salvation, which is now called sustainability. Sustainability is salvation in the church of the environment. Crichton believed that the tenets underlying environmentalism are based on blind faith over facts. Increasingly, it seems facts aren't necessary because the tenets of environmentalism are all about belief. It's about whether you are going to be a sinner or be saved, whether you're going to be one of the people on the side of salvation or on the side of doom, whether you're going to be the one of us or one of them. So now you have a choice. You must pick your religion. You have a choice. You're either going to pick our new religion, the cult of environmentalism, or you continue to stick in your religion, that Bible right there, which is destroying our planet. We have a new religion. We're trying to save the planet. Your religion is trying to destroy the planet. You either join our cult, we're trying to save the planet, or you can continue on with this nonsense in your Bibles about some God that doesn't even exist and some Jesus who died and you say came out of a tomb on the third day and he's alive. What nonsense is that, you and your white supremacists? You join our cult. And you got to make a choice because guess what? In the years to come, your bank's going to want to know what side are you on too. Because we have to make a determination whether we want to continue to do business with you. In addition to hijacking environmentalism as a political movement, communist influences have given environmentalism characteristics of an anti-humanity cult. Canadian political critic Mark Steyn says that according to the environmentalists, quote, we are the pollution. And sterilization is the solution. In their view, the best way to bequeath a more sustainable environment to our children is not to have any. He gave the example of a British woman who had an abortion and underwent sterilization because she believed having children was bad for the environment. So make the choice. Offer your child to God, offer your child to Molech. Offer your child to the Lord, offer your child in the abortion clinic to our goddess, Mother Earth. It's either a God that doesn't exist or it's Mother Earth. And your religion is killing the planet. All of you, you're the enemy. If not for you Christians, the world would be a much better place. Psalm 127, verses 3 and 4. Children are a heritage from the Lord. You get that? A heritage. A heritage. They're not parasites. They're a heritage. Offspring, a reward from Him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. You have two totally different viewpoints here. Light and darkness. Good, evil. God and His Word, environmentalism, and this cult. It's one or the other. And you can't walk the line. There's a choice. This thinking places the natural environment as the supreme priority, far beyond the sacred position of human beings, by means of even controlling human fertility and depriving people of their very right to exist. This view, which is in essence an anti-humanist ideology, is no different from that of communism. It also goes hand in hand with the left's attack on the family and traditional gender roles. Population control has become a method of choice for dealing with environmental degradation, with environmentalist activists and other socialists promoting abortion and anti-natalist policies, and even praising the brutal one-child policy of the Chinese Communist Party. That's what we need. We need what they're doing over there if we're going to ever save the planet. Think about it. This is the world that the children are growing up in. Imagine not knowing God, that even God exists. All you have is the planet. And we have to do everything in our power to save it. Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14, for you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. What are we teaching our children? That they're fearfully and wonderfully made, that God's got a purpose for them and a plan for them. No, we're teaching them your very existence is destroying our planet. Colin McDougall, I told you last week, he wrote an essay, Let No One Deceive You. It's on Bible.org. He writes, over the past few years, people have become so confused that many now feel humanity is acting as a pest and a parasite upon the ecosystem, and that something has to be done to curb the expansion of human population. This confusion, too, results from their denial that God created the heavens and the earth perfectly, and man in harmony with creation until sin entered the world. The problem with our environment is not that there are too many people. In fact, the only command of God that mankind has ever consistently obeyed is to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. This was God's command to Adam and Eve, and one he reaffirmed to Noah and his family after the flood. Wherever human beings have taken our stewardship seriously, our habitat has been able to support surprisingly dense settlement. No, the problem is not overpopulation. The problem is sin. After the explosion of human sin and debauchery that led up to the flood, God placed relational distance between us and the other animal species, Genesis 9. We were permitted to eat them for food, and they were made to instinctively fear us. This tension will continue to accelerate during the generation of the apostasy, to the point that the wild beasts will begin to habitually prey upon people. Revelation 6:8. Something that mankind has never experienced except in a few unusual instances. The answer to the environmental aspect of the falling away is for Christians to know and to defend God's purpose in creating mankind, and to personally pursue that purpose energetically. Well put. We were not created for the planet. The planet was created for us. We are here on this planet. We are not to worship the planet. We're to worship God. He's given us the planet. He's given us the green herbs. He's given us the fish. He's given us the animals. They belong to us. We do not belong to the planet. We belong to Him. Schellenberger mentioned that those who were terrified of nuclear weapons back in the 1970s realized they were never going to rid the world of nuclear weapons. So the target shifted to ridding the world of nuclear power plants. Many environmentalists became depressed that it was through weaponry, nuclear weaponry, India has nuclear capability. Pakistan has nuclear capability. Their nuclear capability brought stabilization to the world. Ronald Reagan said it 40 years ago. Strength through peace, or peace through strength. Peace through strength. It's been that way. Common sense. A burglar is on a street. He's got two homes, both built the same, both have the same alarm system. Okay. Which one is he going to burglarize? This home over here, the owner has a goldfish. This owner over here has a 9mm. Or a flamethrower. Make it medium rare. Wonder which one he picks. Schellenberger says, if we really wanted to make life better for people and put a stop to suffering, let's try and find a way to make energy available and affordable to everyone. And when you look at first world nations, what do they have? Three things. Clean water, enough food, affordable energy. That's what you need. And a stable government that wouldn't hurt, would stop lying. All right. The Federalist writes, the World Health Organization, the WHO, has published a special report in anticipation of COP26 climate change conference insisting the burning of fossil fuels is killing us. That's what, remember, Joe said, we're going to wipe it out. We're going to wipe it out. Hold on. In its report titled, The Health Argument for Climate Action, the WHO calls climate change, quote, the single biggest health threat facing humanity, and calls on governments to act to tackle the climate crisis, restore biodiversity, and protect health. Is that true? Because mama told me, figures don't lie, liars figure. So is that true? Is climate change our single biggest health threat facing humanity? What do the numbers tell you? The number of people who have actually died as a result of natural disasters. Let's see, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, mudslides, typhoons, heat waves, blizzards, all right, whatever. Put them all under there. Number of human beings who have died as a result of natural disasters have been going down. I thought it was the biggest threat. No, it's actually been going down. Evacuation routes, satellite technology, you can read the weather, you can see where storms are coming from, building codes. Let's face it, in Florida, houses are built a lot better today than they were 100 years ago. Common sense. So if it's not climate change that's killing more people, I wonder what is. In a major 2017 study, UK-based Lancet Medical Journal reported that pollution-related diseases were responsible for an estimated 9 million premature deaths in 2015, or some 15 times more than from all wars and other forms of violence combined. Pollution is not only the largest environmental cause of disease and premature death in the world today, the study found, but diseases caused by pollution were responsible for roughly 16% of all deaths worldwide. 3 times more deaths than from AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria combined, 15 times more from all wars and other forms of violence. It is remarkable that given the magnitude of the negative impact of air pollution on human health, the United Nations is spending its efforts trying to convince first world countries to curb the emission of carbon dioxide, which is a colorless, odorless, non-toxic gas, rather than focusing on cleaning the air in third world countries where people are dying daily from the pollution. Duh! Why are they harping on first world nations? Greenhouse gases, carbon neutral, right? Got it? CO2, electric vehicles, more wind turbines, more solar panels, more all that. And the people are dying in third world countries from pollution. But who cares? More from the fit, less from the unfit. What about the fentanyl poisoning? 200 1,000 a year. It is now, from ages 18 to 45, the #1 cause of death in the United States. Fentanyl poisoning. Open border. And it's killing our young people, left and right. Breitbart writes, a new Gallup poll reveals that water pollution is the top environmental concern for Americans, not climate change, which is the crisis that is currently driving policy across a broad range of departments in the Biden administration. Gallup revealed the results of its annual environmental poll ahead of Earth Day on April 22nd last year. Of 6 environmental problems facing the United States, Americans remain most worried about those that affect water quality. Majorities express a great deal of worry about the pollution of both drinking water, 56%, and rivers, lakes, and reservoirs, 53%. Then Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Andrew Wheeler provoked controversy in 2019 when he said that unsafe drinking water was a bigger threat than climate change. In 2020, he told Breitbart News Sunday that the Obama-Biden administration had focused on the virtue signaling of climate change while ignoring environmental problems across the country. So let's stop with the games. What's really going on here? Less well understood is how environmentalist narratives dominate in society today have been shaped and manipulated by communism. Though the rationale for environmental protection is legitimate, and many people have a genuine desire to improve the environment and safeguard humanity's future prosperity, communist elements have commandeered much of the environmental movement to advance their own political agendas. Communism's infiltration of environmentalism has been underway virtually since the beginning of the environmental movement. Environmental science is a complex field of study with research that remains far from conclusive findings on subjects such as climate change. Yet under the influence of left-wing ideology, many green activists and organizations have simplified and turned environmental protection into a highly politicized struggle, often employing extreme methods and radical narratives, sometimes to the point of religious fervor. Rather than following the ancient teachings of moderation and conservation, radical leftist environmentalists eschew morality and tradition in their crusade against everything they deem the enemy of environmentalism, from private business to procreation. Mixed with other radical movements, the green cause has come to be defined by misleading propaganda and authoritarian political measures, turning environmentalism into a kind of communism light. Communism must create or use an enemy that threatens all of humankind and intimidates the public around the world into handing over both individual liberty and state sovereignty. Now, since that was written, by the way, the United States, as of several months ago, and many other nations in the United Nations, handed over sovereignty to the World Health Organization. In the event, not that it's going to happen again, in the event of another pandemic, it'll never happen, don't worry. But in the event it would ever do, United States would not be in sovereign control over its own country. The World Health Organization will be. And we handed it to them. Creating global panic about looming environmental and ecological disasters is almost a guaranteed route to achieving its goals. The first stage was when Karl Marx declared capitalism is opposed to nature, that is the environment. Second stage, the first Earth Day, held in 1970. Shortly after, in 1972, the United Nations held its first Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm. Third stage began on the eve of the Cold War's conclusion, when communism was in political collapse in Eastern Europe. Around this time, communists began to change gears by pushing the narrative of quote-unquote saving the world. In 1988, the World Meteorological Organization, the United Nations Environment Program, created the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And the concept of global warming began to enter the political realm. So in conclusion, there is nothing about the environmental movement that is glorifying to God. Nothing. It is lies, propaganda, and it's a demonic cult. It is a cult manufactured by the father of lies. Right now, the term that environmentalists have taken, climate change, is nothing more than communism. It is communism that is decorated and attired in cultural Marxism. Do not be fooled. As Paul said, do not be deceived. Final words from Epoch Times ebook. Communist doctrine originally promoted a utopia, a heaven on earth, to incite revolt and overthrow the existing social system under the cover of environmentalism. Communism adopted a similar approach, but the vision it described is the exact opposite. In place of the wonderful workers' utopia, is instead a frightening dystopia, a vision of a hell on earth. According to this scenario, in just decades, humanity's very survival will be at risk due to global warming, landslides, tsunamis, droughts, floods, and heat waves. The target recruits of this movement are not the poor, but rather the wealthy, who are expected to abandon their current lifestyles. By the original doctrines of communism, after acquiring power, the first step is to strip the affluent of their wealth with the supposed purpose of redistributing it to the poor. In reality, the poor remain poor, while all the wealth ends up in the hands of the corrupt officialdom. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look at Venezuela. It took one generation to go from the strongest economy in South America and the third strongest in the world. It took one generation. Over 90% of that country is now in poverty. And all the wealth is at the top. The second step entails the establishment of a state-controlled economy. So it's not free market, state-controlled economy. And the abolition of private property. You will not own your home. This destroys the national economy and brings everyone hardship. The same equation plays out at the international level. Wealthy countries are expected to give aid to poorer countries. That is to redistribute wealth on a global scale. In reality, poor countries remain poor, as the money that was intended for their development usually ends up in the hands of the corrupt officials of those countries. Can anybody say Ukraine? $119 billion, and nobody knows where it went. Because the Ukrainian military is saying, we would love to see that money. We're dying out here. We don't have the ammunition. Where'd it go? Oh, we come to find out. See, our sister, she can't get her pension. But our money is now going to Ukraine for the Ukrainian government pensions. They get their pensions. We don't. Meanwhile, the government's responsibility is expanded and market mechanisms are replaced with command economics, using all sorts of heavy-handed environmental policies to obstruct the normal functioning of capitalism, forcing businesses to close or relocate overseas, thus crippling the country's economy. Through these market-oriented methods, the environmental movement seeks to cripple capitalism. Environmental regulations have become important tools for undermining capitalist economies and are becoming known for eliminating more jobs than they create. The focus of modern environmentalism is to spread fear of future disasters and to hold the public and governments hostage to this fear. But among those who actively promote this doomsday panic, many live luxurious lifestyles, using plenty of energy and leaving a large carbon footprint. Clearly, they don't think disaster is imminent. And it is rather interesting, the ones who have bought the $12 million mansions on the water in Martha's Vineyard. The very ones that are saying that that very section of the United States would be underwater by now. They bought mansions on the water. Now, either one or two things. Either you really made a bad investment, or two, you're lying. To make use of a crisis mentality, especially using the common enemy of global warming, to unite different forces to oppose capitalism, it has become imperative for environmentalists to emphasize and exaggerate the nature of the alleged crisis. The simplest way is to stoke mass fear around using the cheapest sources of energy, that is fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, and also nuclear energy. Remember, we're going to get rid of them. We're going to wipe it out. Environmentalists succeeded in making people fearful of nuclear energy decades ago. And now they are trying to make people afraid of using fossil fuels by claiming that fossil fuels lead to catastrophic global warming. However, in reality, climate science hasn't concluded that global warming is caused by human activity or that global warming will definitely lead to disaster. If natural causes are behind climate change, then all these government policies only serve to impede economic development while often providing only marginal benefits. Father, we do come before you as really, Lord, we're just starting to remove the outer layers of this onion as we start to get deeper into the real goal of this movement, the real goal of where the environmentalist movement is headed and using the term climate change in order to get there. It's demonic. It is a spirit of Antichrist that is behind it. It is a spirit which is sending the world off into eventually a one world government under the banner of climate change. Help us, Lord, as we continue. Understand these things, take them in, listen, certainly pray about them. But Lord, as well, we need to tell other people, do not be deceived. Know the truth. And know there is something much more than just this earth. This earth is not a permanent earth. These bodies that we are living in right now are not permanent bodies. We're going to have glorified bodies. We're going to have a new heavens and new earth. Oh Lord, we need to send that message out there. Why? Why are people so afraid? Why are so many people upset? Almost a religious fervor about a planet that you yourself send your word, you're going to melt with fervent heat. Lord, I pray as believers, we take what you've given us, we take it seriously. We're good stewards of our bodies, our children, the planet. We ought to be good stewards with it. But understand that there is an eternity that is waiting for us. And it's not in these bodies, and it's not on this earth. It's in something much greater, much more splendorous. Lord, help us to get that message out there. Continue to understand the issues at hand, and help us to focus on eternity, and help us to focus our lives here while we have these days, really with a heavenly perspective. We thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayers as well as answering our prayers. And we lift up all of these prayers to you and petitions in Yeshua's precious name. Amen.